We're here with Rick Spring, codenamed Aces. Rick was an undercover FBI informant for 9 years where he infiltrated the Ku Klux Klan, the Aryan Nation, and skinheads, just to name a few. Rick, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you for being here, man.
Absolutely. One question for you. I mean, your story is absolutely amazing. Today, we want you to tell the audience about yourself, about what you've been through, this amazing story that you've got to tell. First, tell us a little bit about your childhood.
I grew up in a military family. We traveled quite a bit, different schools across the United States, and I had to make new friends. You know, my social ability to adapt to different situations was key, because to being the new kid on the block, the new kid in school and everything, it has its downsides.
Interesting. Did you experience bullying growing up at all, or?
Oh yeah. I mean, you know, being with the southern accent that I do acquire, and being in upstate New York and places, I was the odd man out. I had a lot of grief as far as not wanting to go to school. Just because of that, I tried to adapt, because that's what I was supposed to do, to go to school. Yeah. You couldn't just quit school back in those days. These days you just quit and walk off. But back in those days you couldn't. I'm an only child. My father was in the Air Force, and mother was a stay-at-home mom, and it was difficult. It was difficult. Seeing a lot of history. You know, my dad was real good about taking me, especially in northern New York, taking me out to the revolutionary spots, you know, and the history places and stuff like that. And that's where I've kind of acquired this knack for a history buff.
Okay.
You know, I like, I've been a lot of places, Fort Ticonderoga, you know, Valley Forge and stuff and things. And then I, you know, not to jump ahead, but then I come back and to those places, and I'm protesting.
Oh, interesting.
People, you know.
Okay, yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about that, the protests that you were a part of.
Well, we would pick a subject title like York, Pennsylvania, the Battle of Yorktown, Gettysburg, and things like that, and go out because of the Constitution, you know, First Amendment rights and freedom of assembly and whatnot. We would exercise those rights and go out and basically just ruin everybody's day that was there because of the hate that was involved. It's very taxing on me, because a lot of places I was there as a kid and enjoyed it, and then I was there trying to make mockery of it.
Wow. So you talked a little bit about your childhood and the bullying that you experienced. What was the worst bullying scenario that you were involved with?
I remember one time, 8, maybe 9 years old, there was a bridge that went across a large river up there in upstate New York, and I was coming across the bridge, and these kids knew me. Kids, I say, they was usually young teenagers. I was 8 or 9, and we had a little scuffle, and I ended up upside down, hanging off the bridge, holding me by the ankles and whatnot. And a good Samaritan stopped and got me on the other side, and it was a traumatic experience.
It sounds terrifying.
Yeah,
I can only imagine.
Hanging upside down on a bridge, you know, it's looking down, and you know, 70, 80 feet below you, there's rushing water and what have you, and it was cold to start out with.
Wow. Yeah.
So yeah, and it was just on and on like that.
Yeah.
You know, I was a big kid and everything, and I took up for myself.
And you mean big? You mean?
Well, yeah, I was
obese,
slightly
obese,
or
just
I was just tall.
tall.
And,
okay.
You know,
a target.
And more times than not, you know, I fought, and I, you know, took care of myself. And but you know, it's not like it's in the movies. You can only fight so many people, and you know, and I got several beatings, a few times and whatnot. But like I said, you know, I got through it, and it builds characters. You know, what is that saying? What doesn't kill you, you know, makes you stronger. Yeah. And I figured later on in life it did in some way make me stronger.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it sounds like obviously going through some of those traumatic experiences that you did, and you had to fight oftentimes, so you resorted to that. You know, growing up, getting to the point where maybe you were in your teenage years. Teenage years can be really difficult. Talk a little bit about as a teenager.
Well, as a teenager, we ended up down here in Louisiana.
Okay.
And
so you moved from...
Yeah, we moved. When my dad retired, my mother's people was from down this part of the country.
Gotcha.
And we retired from down here. So with that said, I was kind of the odd man out because most of the kids down there where I was living grew up together and what have you. So it took a while for me to get with the little cliques because back in those days, a good night is either you had a date or you got the pickup truck, bought some Dixie beer and sat on the corner. And, for lack of anything else to do, just fight each other and just fight
just
for
pick a fight.
for entertainment purposes, and played sports and what have you. And if we couldn't beat them in football, we'd just go over there and try to just beat them up.
Just go beat them up afterwards.
Physically. And there wasn't no guns involved. It's not like today. The kids would get out and we fought in the parking lot, and sometimes the police come, sometimes they wouldn't, and it'd just be fight till you get tired, and everybody get in the truck and go. A lot of times, everybody that was fighting, go drink some beer out in the woods and just kind of relax, but. With that said, those years getting there was very taxing. It was very, very, very taxing. And I had a good childhood. I mean, I can't, my parents were good parents. They took care of me. My dad worked me. I wasn't a spoiled child by any means. I worked in the hay fields and I done what I had to do. We didn't need the money or anything, but it was just he was giving me this work aptitude, which I didn't understand at the time, but later on in life I did. Because when you have a work aptitude, you kind of, you want to work. You don't mind working.
Right.
You go out, you work, and you do what you got to do.
So it's still a good work ethic into you.
Good work
it sounds
ethic.
like, although you were dealing with the bullying and you were learning to really to defend yourself, if you will. You really had sounds like your parents were great parents.
I can't. I'm not going to be one of these people where because I ended up in a criminal past and whatnot like that. I don't blame my parents at all. It was just. It was all me. It was all me with the adrenaline.
What happened when you turned 18? Did you graduated?
Well, I had a kind of a thing to where this is really the first time that I've come out public with it at all. But I was adopted, and I didn't find out that I was adopted until I was going to get ready to graduate.
Wow.
And the school informed my parents that I had to get the paperwork straight. So up until that time, I thought that my dad was my dad, which he still is my dad.
Sure.
He's passed away, and but it's kind of one of them things that I did. It was traumatizing to me. Do I blame anybody? No, I understand where they were coming from. It's just that they didn't think about the little things, the little things where, you get to where you got to graduate and all the paperwork's got to be straight. So my dad went down and he got the paperwork straightened out and everything. I graduated.
Well, I mean, I can only imagine. You find out at 18, you find out you're adopted. All of a sudden
Actually,
now,
it was 17.
Or 17. Apologize.
No.
At 17, you find out you're adopted, and I mean, now what happens then? Do you have an identity crisis? Do you have? I mean, does that kind of what does that do to your psyche now at that point?
Well, hindsight. I was involved with music back then. I had the high school band and whatnot. I played sports, and I was even senior class president.
Wow.
And by that time. But I guess this is one of those deals to where, a lot of psychologists and stuff kind of need to analyze it. But just in my layman's hindsight view of it, it did kind of have something to do with me. And I didn't blame my mother. I didn't blame my dad because I knew they was doing that just the sole reason of there's no reason to not do it. That's my dad ever since I was a small kid. He instilled a lot of values that I wish, that I would have took heed to and I would have carried on in life, back, kind of reversed a little bit. He told me one day I come home, my clothes was ripped up, my eye was black, and the knuckles was all beat up, and told him what happened, and he said, there's always going to be people like that in life. There's always people that's going to hate. And hate is a kind of a thing to where not for any logical reason. Just hate you because of the way your skin looks, hate you because of the way you talk, hate you the way because you weigh.
Yeah.
And you know, and I didn't really let that sink in until later on.
So you've got this bomb of information now. You're adopted. You kind of are in a trust place where you're challenged with trust. I mean, it's a tough situation for a teenager, an adult, let alone a teenager. You decide, go out on the road. You go out to do some music. You were saying you were following some bands. Talk a little bit about some of the bands that you followed.
Well, when I was in high school, I had I was playing guitar ever since I was 6, 7 years old. Really didn't get to that place to where I should have because of whatever. But as far as guitar talent. But I played. We had a little band and whatnot and stuff like that. So, but I started hanging out in Shreveport to the local bands and got involved with Danny Johnson and Glenn Graves. And they had separate bands at the times, but I was go out and volunteer my services as far as roadie, loading equipment and whatnot. That went on for 6, 8, 9 months and whatnot, and it was road time.
Yeah.
So me being me.
And how old were you?
19.
19, all right.
And
so you're 19, you're a roadie at 19, wow.
19 years old, I'm a roadie, and we go out on the road, and we tour every place from Maine to Seattle to San Antonio, El Paso to, and Miami.
This is in the 70s, sorry to interrupt, right? It's we're thinking that's the kind of
late
the band.
70s,
late 70s,
late
gotcha,
70s,
yeah,
late
yeah.
70s.
Yeah.
And, as we went around and stuff and toured, Danny got a lot more recognition, and we ended up in Hollywood. Lived right off Sunset Boulevard, worked a deal with Polydor Records. Danny got a job. That was back when we was playing the Whiskey, and Huey Lewis and the News was just getting going. Nikki Sticks from Motley Crue was playing in a band called London. Adamant and all that. So it was a really wild time, wild time. This country boy, I wore a cowboy hat out there, and I wasn't ashamed of my heritage. I wasn't ashamed of nothing. And we got through it.
Wow.
We got through it. And then Danny got picked up with, some large acts, Rod Stewart and whatnot like that.
Yeah.
I was associated with that.
Wow.
With that. And
it's still 19, 20,
20,
with,
20, around in that area there. And then we come back, we had a band called, ironically, Danny Johnson and the Bandits.
Okay.
And
all right.
I was the road manager. And there was a time when we were down in Crotch Springs, Louisiana, South Louisiana. Just got through doing a show, and I looked over at my sound man, Kieran, and I told him, I said, what would be really crazy? I said, if somebody was to come into a town with a band, rob the bank, go back to the show, get in the bus and leave, I said it'd be totally out of the norm for somebody to do that, and they'd probably get away with it. Well, my very intelligent hippie type, he's one of these California guys, long blonde hair, sandals and stuff. He looked at me and he said, well, I guess that if you wanted to do it, I guess that's one of the things that, you need to do, he was just playing with me. Wow. But me being me, I kind of expanded on that a little bit, and I ended up out in LA, and I was living right off of North Gardner down there on Sunset Boulevard, and then the bottom kind of fell out. The late 70s, the gas went up, or around in that area there. Anyway, we quit touring, and it's nothing worse than having a lifestyle and losing it, especially being from Louisiana out on Sunset Boulevard.
Right.
So I started robbing banks.
Wow. You started, so wait.
I didn't rob any, let me make this totally clear. Because of and I give them a lot of credit, LAPD, they have a bank robbery task force out there with a bunch of helicopters, which helicopters is a bank robber's nightmare.
Wow.
Especially, I did it by myself. I didn't have a lot of cohorts. I never hurt anybody. I never shot anybody. There wasn't none of these big television shootouts or anything.
Right.
I just go in, get the money, and leave.
All right. So let me just follow this. You're on the road, touring with bands, and you come up with this brilliant idea. Hey, we're gonna go rob banks.
Well, yeah.
And you rob banks, and you're 20 years old.
Yeah.
You're 20 years old.
Yeah, yeah. And no disrespect, it's brilliant. Well, yeah. At the time, I thought it was brilliant.
I'm being ironic when I say brilliant.
I know. But you know, and yeah, it was an idea.
Wow.
You know, it was an idea, and the really bad thing about it is because of my, you know, not going back, because my, you know, I could go to work. I didn't have no problem working nowhere.
Right.
It's adrenaline rush, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're out on stage or around the stage or associated with the band and everything, you know, you share that enthusiasm with the crowd, and it's an adrenaline thing. And because in my past, I didn't really have a fear threshold. So I figured if I just suited up and went in there and got the money, and I got it.
Wow. I mean, it's mind-blowing. So, all right, so how many, I mean, that's the question. How many banks did you rob?
Okay. I've been asked that question a lot of times, and I will say this. I was the road manager for a major rock girls band at the time.
Okay.
You know.
Oh, interesting.
And
well, I gotta ask, what band is that?
It was Vixen.
The Vixen. Vixen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Vixen.
All right.
And hi, girls. And we left. We played a show at the Palomino. We played a show in, I think it was Tempe, Arizona, or Phoenix, one of the two. And I called. I was staying with a very notoriable drummer. I mean, this guy was, he wrote songs with Stewart and this, that, and the other. And I stayed in his house. Okay. So we were sitting at Howard Johnson's out there, and for some reason, I just went to the payphone, in a cell phone room, went to the payphone and called him. And I said, hey, Karen, what's going up? And he goes, Rick, the FBI just kicked the door in on so-and-so's house, and they want to know where you're at. Oh. And I said, for what? I said, bank robbery. And I said, well, that's ridiculous. I mean, bank robbery, I don't know what you're talking about. And went to Roland, Oklahoma. We was playing a club out there that was a little bit questionable about where they get their finances, because we was a pretty expensive band. Okay. And at Roland, Oklahoma. And the hotel's still there. And we got to the hotel, and all of a sudden, didn't get really in the hotel good. The helicopter started coming over the top of us, and these large gentlemen in bib overalls started attacking me. Yeah. And I ran around the pasture for a few minutes, and they tackled me, and they took me to Muskogee, Oklahoma. And that hotel is actually still there. Wow. It's still there. I have a friend of mine that every time we used to go by there, I said, you remember that hotel right there?
That's the hotel.
Yeah, that's the room. That's the balcony I jumped off of. That's the Patrick. Because, you know, I thought I was being arrested by a bunch of vigilantes because, you know, in that part of the country, undercover looks like, you know, Farm Aid or something. I mean, you know, there's a bunch of farmers and stuff. And they took me in the car, took me to Muskogee, and I went in there to get back to the question. After about a few days, this very attractive assistant attorney general come in there, assistant attorney, you know, for the government. There's a big card table there. And she said, I want you to look at these pictures. In every picture, there was a picture of some large person in a ski mask, black suit, with a pistol, and there was a name under it. And down. There were several there. And she says, does this ring any bells? And I go, no, ma'am, it don't. I see a large person with a ski mask and everything. She says, okay, that's all good.
Now wait, did you know immediately it was you?
You know. There was a lot of substance back in those days, so I can use that excuse to where I don't remember. But anyway, let me put it to you this way. My blood pressure went up about 1,000 degrees, and my heart started beating a little bit harder.
And Rick, one more time, how old are you at this point?
21.
21 years old.
And so, with that said, she said, you know, does this recognize? I said, no. She said, okay, I've got somewheres to go. She said, let me make this really quick. You are going to confess to the Puget Sound National Bank robbery, which we kind of have you on, or I'm going to drag you through each one of these towns. And if I get a conviction, fine. If I don't, fine. But you're going to spend 2 years in each one of these. So I was going to be doing a complete sentence in county jails all the way across the United States, just fighting these cases that
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
May or may not lose.
Right.
It's just,
And you didn't have the means.
You could sit in jail for 2 years
Yeah.
fighting a case, and they come up and go, "Oh, you're right. You're not innocent."
Yeah.
And
And you didn't really have the means at that point
No.
to defend yourself or anything like that.
my means was suitcases full of $100
Yeah.
bills.
Yeah.
And
There you go.
50s.
There you go. Rick, you're 21 years old. You're facing 16 years in prison. And you talked about, you have to adapt. Did you have to get involved with some groups? Did you have to do some things that you didn't want to do in prison?
Well, once you establish yourself, meaning that you're not going to take any, crap from anybody, people start looking at you. People meaning the one that's running the yards. People meaning the one that's the different groups and whatnot. And I got noticed. Just for somebody that, not for my spectacular abilities to do anything, it's just that if I got into something, I didn't go run to the man, I didn't go into protective custody, I didn't do a lot of things, I just took either I took, a beating or I give the beating. And I was approached by some individuals that has gangs and affiliations, dirty white boys. And
Okay.
they were, in prison. It is not necessarily by race, but what it is separation or segregated by where you're from. El Salvador, Colombia,
Oh, interesting.
Texas, and different things like that. And a lot of the guys that I was with were from the South.
Okay.
DWB.
Okay.
And it's all about getting with somebody and being able to, converse with them, do deals with them.
Yeah.
We had a lot of contraband that was going on in and out and stuff.
Right.
You make money,
Right.
just like anything else. Sometimes more guys was making money inside the joint than was outside.
Well,
So, got involved with them and made a lot of connections with the AV and just survived. Because that's all it was, survival.
yeah.
And they profess to be racist. They profess
Okay.
to be doing this, but they have no problem of going down the tier and buying heroin from the Chicanos or the blacks or
Yeah.
whatever. There's no problem. It's business after that. And
Well, and I've heard of that where in prison you kind of have to join a gang. You have to be a part of a prison gang or something like that. So these dirty white boys, did you begin to as racist? I assume they were racist. Did you begin, or maybe they weren't?
well, I mean, yeah, they were, but
Okay.
what I was getting at is that they were racist,
Yeah.
but it boiled down to not the conventional type of racism. It was a segregation
I see.
racism.
I see.
If that makes any sense. It was a thing to where we had our own unit, we had our own clique, we had what we did. And if it has anything to do with another group, as far as getting contraband, as far as intermingling, as far as having to sit down because somebody wronged the other one, I don't, in my opinion, the racist part of it was not really, adamant about the day-to-day activity.
I see.
It's just that these people belong over here.
I see.
That's who they are. Yes, do they have the N-word? Yes, do they have the slang that goes along with it? Because it's prison.
I got you.
You're not walking around with a bunch of English scholars.
Right.
So, that racism thing is kind of a gray area.
Okay.
It really is. It's a gray area.
What was the worst thing that happened to you in prison?
Happened to me personally, or what
Yeah.
I seen?
Happened to you? Well, let me ask the question differently. What was the most impactful thing that happened to you or that you saw while you were in prison?
We had what's called a ghost. A ghost is because they have what's called Unicor. Unicor is a factory that usually makes government furniture, helmets and stuff for the government, where they sell them cheap, and that's supposed to be some type of rehabilitation. Well, there's different types of material that comes out there. And I seen somebody get their head cut off and throw down the tier, which was rolling like a bowling ball.
Wow.
I've seen.
And that was somebody had pushed them into it, or or it
Oh
just was
yeah,
an accident.
they had it coming.
Wow.
And I've seen somebody that has went into the visiting room, swallowed balloons, and swear they didn't get balloons, meaning contraband with
Okay. Okay.
and they went in and cut them out of him,
Wow.
which is very messy.
Wow.
And it goes on and on and on like that. I mean, it goes on and on.
Does it harden your heart? A lot of people say
Yeah.
that prisons harden your heart.
Yeah, it hardens. It has, you have a very dim view on humanity. You know, I mean, you know, those people like I was talking about in school that would just beat somebody up for their tennis shoes. Now they're beating somebody up, stabbing them 50 or 60 times and cutting your head off.